Science Beetle.
Welcome back, students. Here's another problem that we want to go ahead and tackle. And in this problem, we have a balanced equation. It's identified here at the very bottom. And the question asks us, if the reaction of 47.3 grams of H2S produces 9.16 grams of H2O, what is the percent yield? So again, we have to recall our equation. And that equation's here. And so let's go ahead and see what's given. The given here is that we have 4.73 grams of H2S. It produces 9.16 grams of H2O. And so those two things coupled with the reaction is what we have at our disposal. For this particular problem, I know in the last problem I did the long method. In this method, I'm going to use the short method. And to give you a way to actually solve these problems without doing a lot of math overall. But if you're not comfortable with this method, don't worry, you can always use the long method. Go ahead and refer to the previous lesson, sample problem 1, for an example using the long method. So we're going to go ahead and continue with the short method in this example. And so the way I'm going to start this, I'm just going to rewrite the equation here so that we can actually get a better view of the equation, and then you'll notice when we do the math that it'll work out in the end. So recall with the short method, I'm going to go ahead and start the first row, and I'm going to include the given of any of the items in grams. And we are given that we have 47.3 grams of H2S. So let me go ahead and include that here in the table. Then the other thing we know is that we actually get 9.16 grams of H2O. This right here, this is what was actually obtained. So this is the actual. So we don't have to go very far already. We already have part of our information here. So if I go ahead and include this up here at the very end, I'll substitute 9.16 for the actual in our equation. But we still need to find our theoretical, or what we truly expect to get from the 47.3 grams of H2S. And since we're talking about the water, we need to come over here and we need to find the grams of water. And so recall, if we use the short method here, I need to convert my grams of H2S to moles of H2S. And so in order to do that, I take 47.3 grams of H2S, and I need to convert it to moles. And now, for every problem, even if I use the short method, I still need to do this in order to figure out how many moles I have. And so I go ahead and do that here in the next section. So I multiply 47.3 grams of H2S. I multiply that by the molar mass. And we know that 1 mole of H2S contains 34.07 grams. When we do this, the grams are going to cancel. And what that's going to give us is, and so when we do that math, we get 1.39 moles of H2S. And so I'm going to go ahead and move this amount here. I'm going to go ahead and place it in my table, right there. So now, since we start here, we got to keep in mind that we start with a coefficient of 2, so we need to divide everything by 2. And so I'm going to go ahead and divide this by 2. And since I'm trying to find water, in this case on the right-hand side, I'm going to divide that by 2. Okay? And so now what we do is we take the 1.39, I'm going to multiply it times 2, and then I'm going to divide it by 2. And when I do that, that answer essentially is going to be 1.39 moles of H2. Oh, okay. And so we're almost there. Now we got to take this amount, and then we got to find the number of grams. And so in order to do that, then we need to take this next step and convert the 1.39 moles of H2 into grams. So in order to do that, we divide. We know that 1 mole of H2O contains 18 grams of H2O. And so when we do that multiplication there, we know that the moles are going to cancel. And so when we multiply 1.39 times 18, the number of grams that we get is 24.98. Now keep in mind that we're not done. What we've done is we've solved how much grams we need. We still need to find what the percent yield is. We know from this problem that 9.16 grams were produced actually. We just calculated the theoretical, or how much we truly expected. So if we divide these two amounts, and if we divide, essentially, if we go ahead and go through and we take 9.16 divided by the 24.98 times 100. This answer should be the percentage we're looking for. So let's go ahead and divide those out and see what we get. And when we do that, the answer we get is 36.67%. And so that would be your answer there. And again, so what I used here is I used the short method this time in this particular problem. Hopefully that helps. I've already given you two examples, one using the long method. In this example, I used the short method. Now it's up to you which one you use. If you want to use the short, use the short. If you want to use the long, use the long. Irregardless of which way you go, the very first step, you still need to convert grams into moles. And that'll get you started. And then from there, you do, if you need to go back to grams, you do need to convert the final answer that you get in moles into grams. And both ways, you use the molar mass to do so. So look for the next lesson. I'll provide another example of that one, and hopefully that'll give you yet another example of practice for these types of problems.